Annastacia Palaszczuk returns to work tomorrow after her holiday, but the accusations that she is a part-time Premier, I think, will hang around her for quite some time. And it seems her Labor colleagues are cottoning on to this. Joining me in studio now is Queensland's Shadow Education Minister, Dr. Christian Rowan. Christian, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much, Amanda.
How long do you give Ms Palaszczuk as Premier of Queensland? And what's with all the jostling? Are her colleagues going to succeed in giving her the nudge?
Well, Amanda, they're matters for the Labor Party, but what Queenslanders are talking to me about is the chaos and crisis that is engulfing this government, and whether it's on youth crime, whether it's what's happening in our hospital and health system, whether it's housing affordability, cost of living pressures, or what's happening in education as well. So Queenslanders are saying that they want action on these issues. They're struggling to pay their bills. Electricity bills are going up. Their cost of living pressures that they're all under, whether they're families or older people, they're all experiencing those issues. And the chaos and crisis which is engulfing the government means that their issues aren't being addressed. So it really doesn't matter whether it's Cameron Dick, whether it's Stephen Miles or Shannon Fentiman, or Annastacia Palaszczuk, who's in the top job. These people have been sitting around the cabinet table. They haven't had their eye on the ball. They've stopped listening to Queenslanders. And there are a myriad of crises that are engulfing this government.
You make a good point. I mean, all the people who are jostling for leadership opportunities here, they all have their fingerprints on every single fail that you've listed. And sad to say, there's so many more. Nothing changes, does it, if there's a change of leadership? It's the same old people with the same old ideas and the same old incompetence.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's Annastacia Palaszczuk, Stephen Miles, Shannon Fentiman or Cameron Dick. They've all been sitting around the table. They haven't had a vision or a plan for Queensland. These crises have evolved over a period of time. They've watered down the youth justice laws, and we're seeing crime right across Queensland. In relation to our hospital and health system, there hasn't been an investment in the infrastructure that's needed, let alone proper workforce planning. Housing affordability, cost of living pressures are all skyrocketing. And in education, there's a myriad of problems as well.
The turmoil at the top has been the target of a new Liberal National Party ad. Let's take a look.
Whoever wins Labor's leadership game, Queensland loses. We'll still be stuck with the same old chaos and crisis. There's only one way to get the change Queensland needs. Show Labor the door in 24.
Obviously, the message of that is that chaos and dysfunction. Is that feedback you're getting from the community as you go about your electorate?
Absolutely. So people are talking about showing Labor the door in 24, and that's where this has really come from, that people are tired of a lack of action on many issues that they're facing on a daily basis. They want to be able to buy a home or rent. They want to be able to pay all of their cost of living, responsibilities. They want to be able to access the hospital system when they need the hospital system, and they want to know that police officers are available. We've had a reduction in the number of officers, 202 this year when compared to last year. There are 41,500 Queenslanders languishing on the social housing wait list, and ambulance ramping is at 45%, the highest in the nation here in Queensland.
It's breaking all the wrong kinds of records, and that police number is really quite shocking, given we're in the middle of a youth crime crisis. People are crying out for a safer community, and there was a promise from this government at the last election to increase the number of police on the street by more than 1,000. Absolutely absurd. You're the Shadow Education Minister, and Queensland's NAPLAN results really are bottom of the national class. What needs to change here to give Queensland students the education they deserve?
Well, in Queensland over the last 2 years, they haven't met a single target when it comes to reading, writing and mathematics across years 3, 5, 7 and 9, and it's even worse in Indigenous communities. There's a teacher workforce crisis, and if you don't have teachers, then you can't be teaching children, and then you can't be getting good outcomes. And we need good outcomes so that our students of the future go into tertiary education, into higher education, into trades and vocational training, and then become productive members, of our society. So the first thing you need to do is honour your commitments. And at the 2020 election, Annastacia Palaszczuk, her government gave a commitment to recruit 6,190 new teachers and over 1,100 new teacher aides. And the most recent Queensland public sector workforce profile showed that they'd only recruited 587 full-time equivalent. So it's a broken election commitment. There's a teacher workforce crisis here in Queensland, and as a consequence, educational outcomes are suffering.
And yet there are still very capable teachers who were squeezed out during mandates who could be welcomed back and aren't. It's absolute madness. There was a funny story in The Australian today. Dr Jeanette Young, Queensland's governor, has, in what is the middle of a cost of living crisis, charged Queensland taxpayers $56,000 over 2 years for the cost of gardening the property that she stewards in the role. Her office says that that expense is much smaller than it should be, but they won't say by how much. Now, that seems like a lot of money to spend on gardening, especially given that most of that is sort of unmanicured, albeit beautiful bushland of the sort of native advanced variety. How will this sit, do you think, with Queenslanders who are struggling at the moment to pay rent, maintain mortgages, pay for food and fuel and energy?
Well, without all the information on that, Amanda, I'd sort of say it's important to have openness and transparency and accountability when it comes to the expenditure of taxpayer dollars. And there may be a rationale behind that, but at the same time, Queenslanders are suffering with a cost of living crisis. They're having difficulty paying their rents, their mortgages, paying for food and electricity and all of the essentials. So people certainly want a strong accountability when it comes to the expenditure of all dollars here in Queensland. And under the Palaszczuk Labor government, when you look at many of their projects, there have been significant blowouts with respect to how much money has been allocated, a lack of openness and transparency as to how money is spent, and also delays in the delivery of these projects as well. And we simply can't have a situation in Queensland where that goes on.
Well, I would trust you with the transparency that we don't always see from this government. You've been very fair-minded, I think, in your assessment of the governor's expenses. Thank you very much for your time tonight, Dr Christian Rowan, Education Shadow Minister.
Thanks very much, Amanda.